Hello, my amazing learners, and welcome back to the Wisdom English podcast. My name is Sarah, and I am so happy to have you here with me today. In this episode, we're going to talk about something really important for learning English: how you can really learn to speak English confidently. I want to help you speed up the process by telling you what I've learned over many years. Have you ever felt like you're studying a lot but not making real progress? Have you ever wondered why some language learning methods work and others don't? Today, we are going to explore the 5 key principles that truly work and will help you become a more confident and effective English speaker. And make sure you stay with me until the very end, because I'll reveal a 6th bonus principle that ties everything together and is the true secret to long-term success. Over my life, I've spent over 20 years learning different languages, like French, Chinese, and Spanish. And with time and effort, I feel like I've become a confident speaker of those languages. However, what most people don't know is that I've also tried to learn Italian, Malay, and Japanese, and with those languages, I was less successful. So, I asked myself, why was I successful in some and unsuccessful in others? What is it that worked, and what didn't work? And how can I share those lessons to help you become a more confident speaker of English? In this podcast, I'm going to tell you the 5 things that I've found truly work. These principles are based on linguistic research, but also on my own personal experience. So, it's a mix of a little bit of science and a little bit of storytelling. For each point, I'll tell you what works and also what doesn't work, so you can avoid the common traps that many learners fall into. All of this will help you become that confident English speaker you want to be. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Principle number 1. Be focused. To effectively learn English and become confident, you absolutely must be focused. In English, we have an expression, to put the blinkers on, or to have your blinkers on. If you've ever watched a horse race, you'll see that the horses often have these things on the sides of their eyes. These are called blinkers. They prevent the horse from seeing to the side, so it can only see forward, towards the finish line. When we say put your blinkers on, it means to be very focused on your goal and not get distracted by other things. Because if you're not focused, you're going to get distracted, and you're not going to study. You have to be really focused on your goal. My experience trying to learn Italian is a perfect example of what happens when you lack focus. Did you know I actually lived in Italy for a while and taught English to the Italian police? It was a fascinating experience, and I have some interesting stories about that for another day. During the 2 months I was there, I managed to pick up some basic Italian. I could get by in cafes, shops, and restaurants. And for about a week or 2 after I got home, I carried on practicing. But then, life got in the way. I told myself I didn't have time. I was too busy with work and other things. My Italian study just didn't happen. Why? Because I wasn't focused. It wasn't a priority for me. And this is a very important lesson I learned. You have to make learning English a priority in your life. Otherwise, something else will always come up, and you won't do it. You'll say, "Oh, I have my English class today, but I have this to do and that to do. I just don't have time." But the biggest lesson I learned was to never say, "I don't have time," because what that really means is, I choose not to do this, and I learned to change my language. Whenever I felt like I didn't have time for something, I forced myself to be honest and say, "I am choosing not to do this right now." That's the reality, because you always have time. If you don't do your English study in that hour, you will do something else, right? You're not going to stop breathing for an hour. You will do something else. You choose not to do the English study. So, be clear with yourself. Be focused, make it a priority, and say, I choose to do it or I choose not to. But understand that it is always your choice. Principle number 2. Be persistent. This brings us to our second principle. You must be persistent. What a lovely word, persistent. It means to continue doing something, to keep going, especially when it's difficult. I often tell my students that learning English is not a sprint. It's not a 100-meter race. It's a marathon. And to finish a marathon, you need to keep going step by step even when you're tired. You must be persistent. The problem is, if you go on social media, a lot of influencers might tell you something different. They might say, no, you can get fluent in 3 months. Or, learn English with these 5 words in just 10 minutes. The thing is, we people on social media often have one eye on the views and one eye on education. And sometimes, to get more views, some influencers will try to convince you that learning is easy and fast. They might say you can become fluent in 3 months. But that's not true. It takes time. If you go to the Cambridge English website, it will tell you that to move up 1 level on the CEFR scale, for example from Bone to B2, it will typically take around 200 hours of guided study and learning. And the higher up you go, the more time it takes. This is why many good language schools and courses will run for 9 months or a year just to help students move up 1 level. They take into account things like spaced repetition and the time it takes for your brain to truly absorb the language. 9 months for a level that's a much more realistic time frame. It really does take time. So, you must be persistent. And the trick here, the secret to being persistent, is to enjoy your study. If you enjoy what you are doing, you're much more likely to be persistent. You're going to want to carry on. So, do that. Find ways to enjoy your study. Find materials that you find interesting, books that you love, podcasts that are engaging. That's going to help you a lot. Principle number 3. Find your motivation. Let's move on to number 3. You need to find your mojo. This is a fun, informal word. What I really mean by mojo is your motivation. You need to be motivated to learn another language like English. It's the inner fire that keeps you going. One way to harness your motivation to get it and use ITIS to have specific and realistic goals. You may have heard of SMART goals. That's a great framework. Your goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. But for now, let's just focus on specific and realistic. I look at the comments on my videos sometimes and students will say, well, I'm a beginner now, and I want to be fluent in English. Okay, it's a nice ambition, but it's not very specific. What do you mean by fluent? And when do you want to be fluent? In 1 year? In 10 years? A goal like that is too big and too far away. It's like trying to reach for the stars. A much better goal would be something like this. I'm a beginner now, and I want to be able to speak and communicate my ideas on some common topics in the next 6 months. Something like that is much more specific. You could even list the topics you want to master, like travel, food, and hobbies. A teacher can look at that goal and say, that's great. We can help you get from an A2 level to a bone level in 6 months. That goal is specific, it's realistic, and it's measurable. And that can really, really help you stay motivated. Now, the thing with motivation is that you need to feed it. It's like a pet. like your dog or your cat. If you don't feed your pet every day, it will become lazy and tired. It will have no energy. And ultimately, I'm afraid it will die. Your motivation is the same. If you don't feed it, it will disappear. So, how do you feed your motivation? The best thing you can do is to constantly remind yourself why you are doing this. Ask yourself, why am I learning English? Maybe it's because you want to travel and speak to other people. If you are studying for the IELTS exam, your goal is probably not just to get a good score on a test, right? Your real goal, your why, is because you want to study abroad, or you want to work and live abroad, or you want to take your family abroad and have a better life. That is the real why. And in those difficult moments when your motivation is low, you need to remember that powerful reason. Another thing you can do is to connect with other people. I did this when I was learning Spanish. I was living in Spain for about a year. I was there for a long time and I was learning a lot just from living there. But after a year, I decided to join some Spanish classes. My roommate said to me, "What? Why are you taking classes? We live in Madrid. Just go out on the street and talk to people." And I said, "Yeah, I know, and I do. But I find that I'm always saying the same things and I don't really know many people here." When I went to the class, my level just went up so quickly. I was learning a much wider range of vocabulary and grammar, but more importantly, I was connecting with people. I was making friends. I was talking to people who were in the same boat as me. To be in the same boat is an idiom that means to be in the same situation. It was great to connect with others. And when my motivation was lagging, we could cheer each other up and say, "Keep going, you can do it." Connecting with other learners was invaluable. It was the best thing I ever did, even though I was living in Spain at the time. And finally, a nice thing to do is to reward yourself. When you reach a goal, or even a small part of a goal, just give yourself a pat on the back. Reward yourself. Say, "Great, I've done it. I've studied every day for a month. I've learned to speak about this new topic. That's great. Go to the cinema. Go and buy yourself a new book. Give yourself a little reward. This will help keep your motivation going." Principle number 4, big goal, small steps. This brings us to number 4. Have a big goal, but break it down into small steps. This is related to motivation. Having a big, ambitious goal is great, but breaking it down into small, manageable steps is really important. If you've ever been walking in the mountains, if you like rambling, you'll understand this. Sometimes you go out rambling, and you say, "Right, we're going to go in a big circle for 10 kilometers. And you think, "Phew, that's going to take ages." That isn't a very motivating thought. What's much better is to say, "Well, okay, we'll do a circle, but first we'll go to that peak over there. Then we'll go down to that lake. Then we'll go down the valley to the village, and then we'll come around." When you break it down into steps, you have little things you can achieve along the way. And you think, "Oh yeah, that's doable." When I arrived in China many years ago, I knew that I wanted to speak Chinese, and I really wanted to speak to a very high level. I was a bit like that student I mentioned, thinking, "I'm a beginner. I want to be fluent in Chinese." But I also realized that way of thinking wasn't going to work. So I broke it down. I thought, right, what am I going to do in the first year I'm here? My goal for the first year was just to be able to communicate with family and friends of my new Chinese friends. The second year, I wanted to be able to have daily conversations with people on the street and in the shops. And my third year goal was to be able to work and function in Chinese. I broke that big goal into 3 smaller yearly goals. And I remember for the first goal, every day for about 8 months, I went for an hour and a half to a class before work. At 8 o'clock in the morning, boom, to class. And then I would go to work. I did that for 8 months, and that took me up to about an A2 level. And I was able to talk to family and friends about very simple things like, pass me the sugar, or I like this. The key was having a big goal, but focusing on the small steps. You see, the small steps help you focus on the present moment, on the now. When you only have big goals, you start thinking, oh God, it's so much. It's too overwhelming. And the more you think about the future, the less you are present. You get lost in your thoughts. To avoid that, to be present, you need to focus on small steps. Because the small step helps you focus on the present moment, and it works much, much better. Principle number 5, practice lots. Let's move on to number 5. You must practice lots. You see, the big mistake a lot of students make, and I did this as well, although I'm going to blame my teacher at school with French's that we studied too much. We just studied. And by study, I mean we were reading and reading, learning the rules, learning the grammar, reading, and doing a little bit of listening. It was all passive. It was all input. We weren't actually practicing our output. We weren't speaking. We were writing very little. And that's what happened with my French. And so, I got to the age of 18 having studied French for 10 years and I couldn't speak. That's ridiculous. So, it's so important. Practice lots. As you are studying, whether it's with my podcasts, or with a book, or in a class, you must practice at the same time. You can practice speaking out loud. You can practice making your own phrases, changing the phrases you learn. You can practice in the real world. You can practice online with classmates or teachers. Online is the real world now as well, right? Or you can practice face-to-face. It doesn't matter. But as you are studying, you should be practicing just as much as you are studying. That balance between input and output is what will help you become a more effective learner and a more confident speaker of English. Principle number 6, review. And this brings me to my bonus point number 6. I couldn't leave you without telling you how important it is to review if you want to become an effective learner and speaker of English. You must review because, there's a lot of science and theory behind this. Teachers will probably know about Hermann Ebbinghaus and his learning curve, or, his memory curve. Some people call it the forgetting curve. This theory says that after a certain number of hours, a lot of people say 24 hours, you will forget up to 70% of what you've studied if you don't review it. And then, several days later, you need to review it again, or your learning goes down and you forget even more. There's also spaced repetition theory. This is what most of the popular language learning apps like Duolingo are based on. You learn some new words and then the next day they come back again. A few days later, they come back again. That is spaced repetition. And it does work. It's very, very important. So, I think it's essential to review. What I do now with my own language learning is, after a class, I review the notes I've taken a few hours later. And then, a day or two later, I don't review the exact same notes, but I listen to or watch something on the same topic. So, if I've been learning about the weather, I'll listen to the weather report, or I'll watch a film about weather, or I'll do something on a similar topic so there's a recycling of language. Reviewing and recycling are hugely important, very valuable, and quite easy to do. You just have to find the time. And remember, don't say, I don't have time. Say, I choose to do it, or I choose not to do it. The choice is in your hands. Conclusion. The final secret. So there you have it. 5, or rather 6, different principles to help you become a more confident speaker. These are the things that I have found truly work, both in my own experience and in the research I've done. Now, for the secret I promised at the beginning. The secret is that all of these principles work together. You can't just be focused if you're not also persistent. You can't stay motivated if you don't have small, achievable steps. And you can't practice effectively if you don't review what you've learned. The real secret is that you need to create a balanced system for your learning. You need to be a focused, persistent, and motivated learner who has big goals but takes small steps, who practices a lot, and who always reviews. When all of these pieces work together, that is when you will find true, sustainable success. So, my challenge to you is this. Think about these 6 principles. Which one are you weakest in? Is it focus? Is it persistence? Is it motivation? This week, I want you to choose just one of these principles and make a small plan to improve it. If you lack focus, maybe you can create a dedicated study time with no distractions. If you lack motivation, maybe you can write down your why and put it somewhere you can see it every day. Take one small step to build a better learning system for yourself. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Wisdom English podcast channel to watch our next videos.